So we are reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert K. Kiyosaki. And we are on lesson 1, page number 58 of the book and page number 41 of the PDF. Shimangla, is that right?
Yes. So is the poor man happier? I asked. No, I don't think so, replied Rich Dad. The avoidance of money is just as psychotic as being attached to money.
So in the previous, in the reading, he was explaining that someone who's rich can get attached to the money and get very, very, there can be a fear of losing the money or losing that asset that you have acquired. So his question is, the boy's question is that means that if I can get attached to money also and creates a problem, so that means that the poor man is happier than the rich man. So his answer over here is clearly that if you avoid money, that is also as psychotic as being attached to money. So whether you are attached to money or you're avoiding money, again, both of them create a problem for you. So again, samtalta, balance, equanimity, that is what we are really looking for.
As if on cue, the town derelict went past our table, stopping by the large rubbish can and rummaging around in it. The three of us watched him with great interest, when before we probably would have just ignored him. Rich Dad pulled $1 out of his wallet and gestured to the old man. Seeing the money, the derelict came over immediately, took the bill, thanked Rich Dad profusely, and hurried off, ecstatic with his good fortune. He's not much different from most of my employees, said Rich Dad. I've met so many people who say, oh, I'm not interested in money. Yet they'll work at a job for 8 hours a day. That's a denial of truth. If they weren't interested in money, then why are they working? That kind of thinking is probably more psychotic than a person who hoards money.
So basically, we are all interested in money, whether we like it or not, because it is a basic necessity to be able to live comfortably. But we, most of the time, we are in denial that we don't want the money. And that again creates a depleting energy field. So we have to accept what is for what it is. That's it.
As I sat there listening to my rich dad, my mind flashed back to the countless times my own dad had said, I'm not interested in money. He said those words often. He also covered himself by always saying, I work because I love my job. So many people say, oh, I'm not interested in money, yet they'll work at a job for 8 hours a day. So, what do we do? I asked. Not work for money until all traces of fear and greed are gone? No, that would be a waste of time, said Rich Dad. Emotions are what make us human. The word emotion stands for energy in motion. Be truthful about your emotions and use your mind and emotions in your favor, not against yourself.
So what does this imply, right? Now, very clearly, he's really saying that you need to monitor where you are operating from. What is the state of mind? What is the state of consciousness? What is the state of emotions that you are monitoring with? So we come back to the resilience grid. Which side of the grid are you operating from? This is exactly what he's saying over here. Emotions is what makes us human, makes us real. The word emotion stands for energy in motion, right? So the emotion behind an action is what determines what that action is all about. So what is the state of consciousness with which you're doing an action? determines what that action is all about. So we need to assess that, because the same act can become a positive act or an uplifting act in one state, and it can become a very depleting act in another state. Let us say someone is using a knife to cut someone, right? Now, if the guy is actually wanting to harm the person, then the same act is a depleting act. And if a surgeon is cutting a person, it becomes an uplifting act. So the act is not what defines what is happening. It is the consciousness with which we are doing the act, or the emotion with which we are doing the act, which becomes important.
Whoa, said Mike. Don't worry about what I just said. It will make more sense in years to come. Just be an observer, not a reactor to your emotions. Most people do not know that it's their emotions that are doing the thinking. Your emotions are your emotions, but you have got to learn to do your own thinking.
So, Shivangla, come closer to the mic, please. Okay, so now what is he saying here very clearly, right? We need to respond, not react. And most of the time, if you see, we are reacting. And where do we react from? When we look at it from the zero limits perspective, when we are reacting from memory, right? When we respond, respond from intuition, we respond from inspiration. So he says that most people do not know it's their emotions which are doing the thinking. So every thought you have has an emotional content, and that is what actually triggers you off. So we have something called the amygdala hijack, where what happens is that your previous memories or your previous interactions, your previous experiences is what is actually triggering the way that you are acting. And that trigger is basically emotional in nature. So we need to start becoming the observer. So coming into a witness attitude, not getting fluttered by what is happening, allow ourselves to observe what is happening and then act, right? Rather than reacting, we need to start responding.
Can you give me an example? I asked. Sure, replied the rich dad. When a person says, I need to find a job, it's most likely an emotion doing the thinking. Fear of not having money generates that thought. But people do need money if they have bills to pay, I said. Sure, they do, smiled Rich Dad. All I'm saying is that it's fear that is all too often doing the thinking. I don't understand, said Mike. For example, said Rich Dad, if the fear of not having enough money arises, instead of immediately running out to get a job, they instead might ask themselves this question: will a job be the best solution to this fear over the long run? In my opinion, the answer is no. A job is really a short term solution to a long term problem. But my dad is always saying, stay in school and get good grades so you can find a safe, secure job. I interjected, somewhat confused. Yes, I understand he says that, said Rich Dad, smiling. Most people recommend that, and it's a good path for most people. But people make that recommendation primarily out of fear. You mean my dad says that because he's afraid? Yes, said Rich Dad. He's terrified that you won't earn enough money and won't fit into society. Don't get me wrong, he loves you and wants the best for you. I too believe an education and a job are important, but it won't handle the fear. You see, that same fear that makes him get up in the morning to earn a few bucks is the fear that is causing him to be so fanatical about your going to school.
So basically, what is the game here, right? Again, where are you operating from? Are you doing the job out of fear or are you doing it out of love? Are you doing it to learn something or are you doing it to earn something? Right? That makes that shift. That is the big shift that you want. So, what is your attitude with which you're doing something is actually what is driving what you are doing. And that becomes important. Where are you operating from? The left side or the right side of the grid?
So, what do you recommend? I asked. I want to teach you to master the power of money instead of being afraid of it. They don't teach that in school, and if you don't learn it, you become a slave to money. It was finally making sense. He wanted us to widen our views and to see what the Mrs. Martins of this world couldn't see. He used examples that sounded cruel at the time, but I've never forgotten them. My vision widened that day, and I began to see the trap that lay ahead for most people. You see, we are all employees ultimately. We just work at different levels, said Rich Dad. I just want you boys to have a chance to avoid the trap caused by those two emotions, fear and desire. Use them in your favor, not against you. That's what I want to teach you. I'm not interested in just teaching you to make a pile of money. That won't handle the fear or desire. If you don't first handle fear and desire and you get rich, you'll only be a highly paid slave.
So again, you can get addicted to your salary also, right? Also, let's say when a person wins a lottery, you will find if they have not overcome their fear or desire of money, you will find they will come back into the same state of livelihood or the same state of financial comfort that they were before they won the lottery, if they do not learn how to manage the fear and desire and how to manage the money, right? So money management is an attitude. It is not it's not how much you have, but what you do with what you have, which is important.
So, how do we avoid the trap? I asked. The main cause of poverty or financial struggle is fear and ignorance, not the economy or the government or the rich. It's self inflicted fear and ignorance that keep people trapped. So, you boys go to school and get your college degrees, and I'll teach you how to stay out of the trap. The pieces of the puzzle were appearing. My highly educated dad had a great education and a great career, but school never told me how to handle money or his fear of it. It became clear that I could learn different and important things from two fathers. So, you've been talking about the fear of not having money. How does the desire for money affect our thinking? Mike asked. How did you feel when I tempted you with a pay raise? Did you notice your desires rising? We nodded our heads. By not giving in to your emotions, you were able to delay your reactions and think. That is important. We will always have emotions of fear and greed. From here on in, it's imperative for you to use those emotions to your advantage and for the long term, to not let your emotions control your thinking. Most people use fear and greed against themselves. That's the start of ignorance. Most people live their lives chasing paychecks, pay raises, and job security because of the emotions of desire and fear, not really questioning where those emotion driven thoughts are leading them. It's just like the picture of a donkey dragging a cart with its owner dangling a carrot just in front of its nose. The donkey's owner may be going where he wants to, but the donkey is chasing an illusion. Tomorrow there will be another carrot for the donkey. You mean the moment I picture a new baseball glove, candy, and toys, That's like a carrot to a donkey, Mike asked.
So, so what is happening over here, right? We need to understand from where we are operating. Again, we need to use that in a way that will enhance stuff for us rather than pulling us down. And most people will get attracted to the next treat, to the next thing that they want to acquire, rather than really understanding what it is. Also, delay of gratification is extremely important. If you start becoming impulsive and start satisfying everything that you think of that you want without actually delaying gratification, then you're going to land up in problems. They did this experiment. I think it was in this in this book, Conscious Universe, if I'm not mistaken. They did an experiment, and it was a long it I think it's still going on. It's the longest experiment which was going on, where they had a group of children, and they told the children to stand in a line in a field, and they told them that if you go to that end of the other end of the field, you will get one sweet or one whatever, right? But if you don't take that and you come back over here, you will get two of them. And they actually tabulated how many of the kids went on the other side and took the sweet on the other side, and how many of them came back and then took the two sweets. And over the years, they found that the children who did better in life were the ones who came back and took the two sweets. Why? Because they were able to delay their gratification. So delaying of gratification becomes very, very important. So he says over here very clearly, you were able to delay your reaction and think, right? If you just go into a reaction without thinking, you give in to your desire without thinking, then you're going to fall into trouble. So it's like the carrot dangling in front of the donkey.
Yes, and as you get older, your toys get more expensive, a new car, a boat, and a big house to impress your friends, said Rich Dad with a smile. Fear pushes you out the door and desire calls to you. That's the trap. So, what's the answer? Mike asked. What intensifies fear and desire is ignorance. That is why rich people with lots of money often have more fear the richer they get. Money is the carrot, the illusion. If the donkey could see the whole picture, it might rethink its choice to chase the carrot. Rich Dad went on to explain that a human's life is a struggle between ignorance and illumination. He explained that once a person stops searching for information and self knowledge, ignorance sets in. That struggle is a moment to moment decision to learn to open or close one's mind.
So this is again what Vedanta says, know yourself. If you don't have a wider picture, a wider view, you're not looking at the bigger picture, then you're bound to get into trouble. What we say again is that if I'm looking at it from here, I'll only see so much. If I look at it from here, I'll see so much. If I look at it from here, I'll see a bigger picture. So the idea is to actually look and see and find the bigger picture.
Look, school is very important. You go to school to learn a skill or profession to become a contributing member of society. Every culture needs teachers, doctors, mechanics, artists, cooks, business people, police officers, firefighters, and soldiers. Schools train them so society can thrive and flourish, said Rich Dad. Unfortunately, for many people, school is the end, not the beginning.
So again, we keep needing to learn new things. It just doesn't mean that because we've completed school, we don't need to learn anything more, right? A person who stops learning totally stagnates and starts to rot. The idea is to do something new all the time, as much as possible for you.
Look, school is very important. There was a long silence. Rich Dad was smiling. I didn't comprehend everything he said that day, but as with most great teachers, his words continued to teach for years. I've been a little cruel today, said Rich Dad, but I want you to always remember this talk. I want you to always think of Mrs. Martin, and I want you always to remember that donkey. Never forget that fear and desire can lead you into life's biggest trap if you're not aware of them, controlling your thinking. To spend your life living in fear, never exploring your dreams, is cruel. To work hard for money, thinking that it will buy you things that will make you happy, is also cruel. To wake up in the middle of the night, terrified about paying bills, is a horrible way to live. To live a life dictated by the size of a paycheck is not really living a life. Thinking that a job makes you secure is lying to yourself. That's cruel, and that's the trap I want you to avoid. I have seen how money runs people's lives. Don't let that happen to you. Please don't let money run your life.
So what is he saying over here? That for most people, they are living paycheck to paycheck. And as soon as they get their paycheck, they are looking at buying something, right? So this culture of living on a loan, of spending what you don't have right now, will always land up creating fear in you, because you will have that, how am I going to pay the next installment? How am I going to pay my next bill? How am I going to do this and how am I going to do that? So you're constantly living in fear. And that is something that all of us need to avoid. Because if you are, अपने कहावत है ना हिंदी में, जितना चादर उतना फैलाओ. If you are spreading your chadar more than what you can do, you are going to land up creating a problem for yourself. In short, this is what he is trying to say, that if you are spreading yourself thin, then you're creating fear in yourself unnecessarily. You have to know what your limits are, what your capacities are.
A soft ball rolled under our table. Rich Dad picked it up and threw it back. So, what does ignorance have to do with greed and fear? I asked. Because it is ignorance about money that causes so much greed and fear, said Rich Dad. Let me give you some examples. A doctor, wanting more money to better provide for his family, raises his fees. By raising his fees, it makes healthcare more expensive for everyone. It hurts the poor people the most, so they have worse health than those with money. Because the doctors raise their fees, the attorneys raise their fees. Because the attorneys' fees have gone up, school teachers want a raise, which raises our taxes, and on and on and on. Soon there will be such a horrifying gap between the rich and the poor that chaos will break out and another great civilization will collapse. History proves that great civilizations collapse when the gap between the haves and the have nots is too great. Sadly, America is on that same course because we haven't learned from history. We only memorize historical dates and names, not the lesson.
So again, it's a rolling stone. So when there was the barter system, it worked totally on demand and supply. As to, you had some capability or you had something that another person wanted, you exchanged it. So there was no inflation. Now, when we are living in an economy which is cost plus economy, so everything you add your bit, you add your bit, you add your bit, which is what is leading to inflation and increasing the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Aren't prices supposed to go up? I asked. In an educated society with a well run government, prices should actually come down. Of course, that is often only true in theory. Prices go up because of greed and fear caused by ignorance. If schools taught people about money, there would be more money and lower prices. But schools focus only on teaching people to work for money, not how to harness money's power. But don't we have business schools? Mike asked. And haven't you encouraged me to go for my MBA? Yes, said Rich Dad. But all too often, business schools train employees to become sophisticated bean counters. Heaven forbid a bean counter takes over a business. All they do is look at the numbers, fire people, and kill the business. I know this because I hire bean counters. All they think about is cutting costs and raising prices, which cause more problems. Bean counting is important. I wish more people knew it, but it too is not the whole picture, added Rich Dad angrily.
So now what is happening? When a person is only looking at the present in the sense of what is the money you're making, he is not looking at the emotional content. He is not looking at building a team. He is not looking at enhancing performance. He is not looking at learning new ways to do things. He is only counting kitna mein becha, kitna mein kharida, and what is the profit. But that's not the end game. If I want a long-term thing, then I need to have balance. I need to have a balance between what I'm earning and what I am doing. Okay, only counting money doesn't work at the end of the day.
So, is there an answer? Asked Mike. Yes, said Rich Dad. Learn to use your emotions to think, not think with your emotions. When you boys mastered your emotions by agreeing to work for free, I knew there was hope. When you again resisted your emotions, when I tempted you with more money, you were again learning to think in spite of being emotionally charged. That's the first step.
So this is important, right? Be aware. Start looking at the bigger picture rather than looking at the smaller picture. Rather than looking at a short term, have a bigger perspective. And that comes when you expand your perspective, when you enhance your state of conscious awareness. That is when that thing starts to come into your life.
Why is that step so important? I asked. Well, that's up to you to find out. If you want to learn, I'll take you boys into a briar patch, a place almost everyone else avoids. If you go with me, you let go of the idea of working for money and instead learn to have money work for you. And what will we get if we go up with you? What if we agree to learn from you? What will we get? I asked.
So it's always, what will I get? What will I get? Right? If I do this, what will I get? Now, if you're focused on what you will get, then you will get just that, right? But if you're focused on learning, if you're focused on expanding, if you're focused on growing, then the amount you will get will be much more than what you would actually get. But most of the people are always, what's in it for me? That's the question they'll end up asking, rather than saying yes to life and moving ahead with life.
The same thing Brer Rabbit got, said Rich Dad, referring to the classic children's story. Is there a briar patch? I asked. Yes, said Rich Dad. The briar patch is our fear and greed. Confronting fear, weaknesses, and neediness by choosing our own thoughts is the way out. Choosing our thoughts, Mike asked, puzzled. Yes, choosing what we think rather than reacting to our emotions. Instead of just getting up and going to work because not having the money to pay your bills is scaring you, ask yourself, is working harder at this the best solution to this problem? Most people are too afraid to rationally think things through and instead run out the door to a job they hate. The tar baby is in control. That's what I mean by choosing your thoughts.
So being aware of our thoughts is very, very important. Again, what is the state of consciousness with which we are doing something? Why are we doing it? Becomes the important question that we need to ask ourselves, right? And we need to get to the core of why we are doing something. Unless we do that, we will really not take charge of our lives, because something else will be running our life and we will be thinking that we are running our life. Okay, that is where that shift comes.
And how do we do that, my caste? That's what I will teach you. I'll teach you to have a choice of thoughts rather than a knee jerk reaction, like gulping down your morning coffee and running out the door. Remember what I said before, a job is only a short term solution to a long term problem. Most people have only one problem in mind, and it's short term. It's the bills at the end of the month, the tar baby. Money controls their lives, or should I say, the fear and ignorance about money controls it. So they do as their parents did. They get up every day and go work for money, not taking the time to ask the question, is there another way? Their emotions now control their thinking, not their heads. Can you tell the difference between emotions thinking and the head thinking? My caste. Oh, yes, I hear it all the time, said Rich Dad. I hear things like, well, everyone has to work, or the rich are crooks, or I'll get another job. I deserve this raise. You can't push me around. Or I like this job because it's secure. No one asks, is there something I'm missing here? Which would break the emotional thought and give you time to think clearly.
So
As
the question here is that, what more can I do to enhance myself in the position that I am in? Rather, most of the people are thinking, why should I do this? This is not my job. Okay. What will I get out of it? What will be my payment for it? Rather than thinking, what will I learn from this? How can I use this to grow myself? This is extremely important over here.
As we headed back to the store, Rich Dad explained that the rich really did make money. They did not work for it. He went on to explain that when Mike and I were casting 5 cents pieces out of lead, thinking we were making money, we were very close to thinking the way the rich think. The problem was that creating money is legal for the government and banks to do, but illegal for us to do. There are legal ways to create money from nothing, he told us. Rich Dad went on to explain that the rich know that money is an illusion, truly like the carrot for the donkey. It's only out of fear and greed that the illusion of money is held together by billions of people who believe that money is real. It's not. Money is really made up. It is only because of the illusion of confidence and the ignorance of the masses that this house of cards stands. He talked about the gold standard that America was on and that each dollar bill was actually a silver certificate. What concerned him was the rumor that we would someday go off the gold standard and our dollars would no longer be backed by something tangible.
So what is he saying? That today, let us say the dollar or even the rupee, it holds value because we all think that it holds value. Now, tomorrow, if let's say everyone in India decided that the rupee is valueless, right? It does not hold any value. Do you think the rupee will have any value? It will go out of circulation because no one will accept it as payment. No one will accept it. No one will use it to pay for anything, right? Like, for example, when demonetization happened, the 500 rupee note is still the same note. But what happened? It became valueless, right? Because now you can't use it anymore. So, in the same way, what happens is that value is created because of our association with that particular thing. Now he's talking about the gold standard. Now America has actually moved out of the gold standard. Previously, every dollar that was issued, and in fact, every rupee that is issued by the government of India is technically supposed to be backed by a gold reserve, right? If that reserve is not there, that means that note has just been printed and it doesn't have a tangible backing behind it. This is what he's meaning over here, the gold standard, right? Today, America has gone off the gold standard. So let's say if everyone, and on the rupee it says, I promise to pay. The Reserve Bank of India, the chairman, he's signing over there, I promise to pay. The person who's submitting this promissory note to me, I will pay him back for it, right? Now, if it is not backed by enough gold, now suppose everyone decides that I want to give the rupee back to the Reserve Bank of India and take gold instead of that, it may not be possible today because we are printing more notes than what is tangibly there. And in America, it has happened. America has moved out of the gold standard.
If that happens, boys, all hell will break loose. The poor, the middle class, and the ignorant will have their lives ruined simply because they will continue to believe that money is real and that the company they work for or the government will look after them. We really did not understand what he was saying that day, but over the years it made more and more sense. Seeing what others miss. As he climbed into his pickup truck outside his convenience store, Rich Dad said, keep working, boys, but the sooner you forget about needing a paycheck, the easier your adult life will be. Keep using your brain, work for free, and soon your mind will show you ways of making money far beyond what I could ever pay you. You will see things that other people never see. Most people never see these opportunities because they're looking for money and security. So that's all they get. The moment you see one opportunity, you'll see them for the rest of your life. The moment you do that, I'll teach you something else. Learn this and you'll avoid one of life's biggest traps. Mike and I picked up our things from the store and waved goodbye to Mrs. Martin. We went back to the park, to the same picnic bench, and spent several more hours thinking and talking. We spent the next week at school thinking and talking too. For 2 more weeks, we kept thinking, talking, and working for free. At the end of the second Saturday, I was again saying goodbye to Mrs. Martin and looking at the comic book stand with a longing gaze. The hard thing about not even getting 30 cents every Saturday was that I didn't have any money to buy comic books. Suddenly, as Mrs. Martin said goodbye to Mike and me, I saw her do something I'd never seen her do before. Mrs. Martin was cutting the front page of the comic book in half. She kept the top half of the comic book cover and threw the rest of the book into a large cardboard box. When I asked her what she did with the comic books, she said, I throw them away. I give the top half of the cover back to the comic book distributor for credit when he brings in the new comics. He's coming in an hour.
So now, because they were not working for the money, and he was not buying his comic books, right? He looked at it longingly and he saw what she was doing. So now an opportunity is cropping up.
Mike and I waited for an hour. Soon the distributor arrived and I asked him if we could have the comic books. To my delight, he said, you can have them if you work for this store and do not resell them. Remember our old business partnership? Well, Mike and I revived it. Using a spare room in Mike's basement, we began piling hundreds of comic books in that room. Soon our comic book library was open to the public. We hired Mike's younger sister, who who loved to study, to be head librarian. She charged each child 10 cents admission to the library, which was open from 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. every day after school. The customers, the children of the neighborhood, could read as many comics as they wanted in 2 hours. It was a bargain for them since a book cost 10 cents each, and they could read 5 or 6 in 2 hours. Mike's sister would check the kids as they left to make sure they weren't borrowing any comic books. She also kept the books logging in how many kids show up each day, who they were, and any comments they might have. Mike and I averaged $950 per week over a 3-month period. We paid his sister $1 a week and allowed her to read the comics for free, which she rarely did since she was always studying. Mike and I kept our agreement by working in the store every Saturday and collecting all the comic books from the different stores. We kept our agreement to the distributor by not selling any comic books. We burned them once they got too tattered. We tried opening a branch office, but we could never quite find someone as trustworthy and dedicated as Mike's sister. At an early age, we found out how hard it was to find good staff.
So what happened, right? They created a business opportunity out of what they were learning. So that is the game that we need to play. We need to learn and then create that opportunity or grab the opportunity when it comes to us. And also being impeccable with your word. This is something that we learned in when we were reading 4 agreements. One of the agreements is being impeccable with your word. Now, if the distributor had found out they were selling the comics, then he would have definitely stopped them from taking the comics. Now, there were many stores, so just imagine how many comics they were getting, and they were not paying for it, but they were making money out of the comic books.
3 months after the library first opened, a fight broke out in the room. Some bullies from another neighborhood pushed their way in, and Mike's dad suggested we shut down the business. So, our comic book business shut down, and we stopped working on Saturdays at the convenience store. But Rich Dad was excited because he had new things he wanted to teach us. He was happy because we had learned our first lesson so well. We learned to make money for us. By not getting paid for our work at the store, we were forced to use our imaginations to identify an opportunity to make money. By starting our own business, the comic book library, we were in control of our own finances, not dependent on an employer. The best part was that our business generated money for us, even when we weren't physically there. Our money worked for us. Instead of paying us money, Rich Dad had given us so much more.
So what they were learning from Rich Dad was much more than the payment that they would have actually got by working or taking money from him for working in the store. But the lesson is what is most important. Shivangla, you want to stop here?
Yeah, I think why start another chapter today?
No, start it. Please start.
Chapter 2, Lesson 2. Why teach financial literacy? It's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. In 1990, Mike took over his father's empire and is, in fact, doing a better job than his dad did. We see each other once or twice a year on the golf course. He and his wife are wealthier than you could imagine. Rich Dad's empire is in great hands, and Mike is now grooming his son to take his place, as his dad had groomed us. In 1994, I retired at the age of 47, and my wife Kim was 37. Retirement does not mean not working. For us, it means that, barring unforeseen cataclysmic changes, we can work or not work, and our wealth grows automatically, staying ahead of inflation. Our assets are large enough to grow by themselves. It's like planting a tree. You water it for years, and then one day it doesn't need you anymore. Its roots are implanted deep enough. Then the tree provides shade for your enjoyment. Mike chose to run the empire, and I chose to retire.
So what is he saying over here? We create the assets. That means money starts working for itself, right? So that we don't have to work. The money works for us.
Whenever I speak to groups of people, they often ask what I would recommend that they do. How do I get started? Is there a book you would recommend? What should I do to prepare my children? What is your secret to success? How do I make my millions? Whenever I hear one of these questions, I'm reminded of the following story. The richest businessman. In 1923, a group of our greatest leaders and richest businessmen held a meeting at the Edgewater Beach Hotel in Chicago. Among them were Charles Schwab, head of the largest independent steel company, Samuel Insull, president of the world's largest utility, Howard Hobson, head of the largest gas company, Eva Kruger, president of International Match Company, one of the world's largest companies at that time, Leon Fraser, president of the Bank of International Settlements, Richard Whitney, president of the New York Stock Exchange, Arthur Cotton and Jess Livermore, two of the biggest stock speculators, and Albert Fall, a member of President Harding's cabinet. 25 years later, 9 of these titans ended their lives as follows. Schwab died penniless after living for 5 years on borrowed money. Insull died broke in a foreign land, and Kruger and Cotton also died broke. Hobson went insane. Whitney and Albert Fall were released from prison, and Fraser and Livermore committed suicide. I doubt if anyone can say what really happened to these men. If you look at the date, 1923, it was just before the 1929 market crash and the Great Depression, which I suspect had a great impact on these men and their lives. The point is this: today we live in times of greater and faster change than these men did. I suspect there will be many booms and busts in the coming years that will parallel the ups and downs these men faced. I am concerned that too many people are too focused on money and not on their greatest wealth, their education. If people are prepared to be flexible, keep an open mind, and learn, they will grow richer and richer despite tough changes. If they think money will solve problems, they will have a rough ride. Intelligence solves problems and produces money. Money without financial intelligence is money soon gone.
So what is he saying very clearly? That improving yourself, educating yourself, learning new things is your true wealth, because no one can take that away from you. Whatever the situation may be, that wealth will remain with you. No one can take it away. But when you have just physical wealth, anyone can take it away from you. You are subjected to the variances that are happening outside you. But if you know something, then you know it. So it's saying over here, I am concerned that too many people are focused too much on money and not their greatest wealth, which is their education. So education and learning becomes extremely, extremely important.
Most people fail to realize that in life, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. We've all heard stories of lottery winners who are poor, then suddenly rich, and then poor again. They win millions, yet are soon back where they started. Or stories of professional athletes who, at the age of 24, are earning millions but are sleeping under a bridge 10 years later. I remember a story of a young basketball player who, a year ago, had millions. Today, at 29, he claims his friends, attorney, and accountant took his money and he was forced to work at a car wash for minimum wage. He was fired from the car wash because he refused to take off his championship ring as he was wiping off the cars. His story made national news and he is appealing his termination, claiming hardship and discrimination. He claimed that the ring is all he has left, and if it was stripped away, he'll crumble. I know so many people who became instant millionaires, and while I am glad some people have become richer and richer, I caution them that in the long run, it's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep and how many generations you keep it.
So
So, when
this is also seen, there's a 7-year cycle, in fact, where one generation makes the money, the other one builds it. By the third time, they're coming to the top of the peak. And then after that, it starts to downfall. Okay. This is a cycle which has been normally seen. So that's why he's saying that how many generations you keep the money. So that means how are you training your children to be able to handle that money that you have generated, right? That becomes very, very important. So what is your mindset with which you are handling the money is what is more important than making money.
So, when people ask, where do I get started? Or tell me how to get rich quick, they often are greatly disappointed with my answer. I simply say to them what my rich dad said to me when I was a little kid. If you want to be rich, you need to be financially literate. That idea was drummed into my head every time we were together. As I said, my educated dad stressed the importance of reading books, while my rich dad stressed the need to master financial literacy. If you're
So financial literacy is not what you're thinking. As we go ahead, we'll understand more that what did he really mean by financial literacy.
If you're going to build the Empire State Building, the first thing you need to do is dig a deep hole and pour a strong foundation. If you're going to build a home in the suburbs, all you need to do is pour a 6-inch slab of concrete. Most people in their drive to get rich are trying to build an Empire State Building on a 6-inch slab.
Now, this is very important. We have to create a solid foundation for what we are wanting to do. If the foundation is not solid, we will never be able to build what we are really looking for.
Our school system, created in the agrarian age, still believes in homes with no foundation. Dirt floors are still the rage. So kids graduate from school with virtually no financial foundation. One day, sleepless and deep in debt in suburbia, living the American dream, they decide that the answer to their financial problems is to find a way to get rich quick. Construction on the skyscraper begins, it goes up quickly, and soon, instead of the Empire State Building, we have the Leaning Tower of suburbia. The sleepless nights return.
So what he's meaning here These quick, rich schemes, they simply don't work. Shimungla, you're muted.
As for Mike and me in our adult years, both of our choices were possible because we were taught to pour a strong financial foundation when we were just kids. Accounting is possibly the most confusing, boring subject in the world. But if you want to be rich long term, it could be the most important subject. For Rich Dad, the question was how to take a boring and confusing subject and teach it to kids. The answer he found was to make it simple by teaching it in pictures. My rich dad poured a strong financial foundation for Mike and me. Since we were just kids, he created a simple way to teach us. Can we stop here?
Now, please go ahead. Please, one paragraph.
For years, he only drew pictures and used few words. Mike and I understood the simple drawings, the jargon, the movement of money, and then in later years, Rich Dad began adding numbers. Today, Mike has gone on to master much more complex and sophisticated accounting analysis because he had to in order to run his empire. I am not as sophisticated because my empire is smaller, yet we come from the same simple foundation. Over the following pages, I offer to you the same simple line drawings Mike's dad created for us. Though basic, those drawings helped guide two little boys in building great sums of wealth on a solid and deep foundation.
Okay.